Hi guys, Nigel here back with you, and this is part 13 of the Big Bad Buff build for beginners. And as you can see, I've got some scrap plastic over here, my engines are here, and then here we've got a piece of paper towel. If you have bottles like this one for your super glue, you'll often find the lids will get stuck. And I've just recently discovered that if you soak the lids in acetone, it sorts them out. So I thought I'd just start this video by showing this, and you can see the super glue has turned to gunge. Okay, and I'm able to just remove it. You can see it just turns it into a sticky gunge, which is absolutely incredible, and the acetone hasn't affected the nozzle at all. So as we say, I've been doing this now I've been modelling for 51 years. And I'm 57 years old, and I have just learnt this. It's amazing, this hobby, that after all these years, you can still learn things. Now, that nozzle is blocked, so I need to poke it out with something. Here we go, let's find a pointy tool. So yeah, but you can see that the actual super glue that was all in here that was jamming everything up, it's just turned to go. We can get in here with some tweezers. We just pull out piles of gunge, which is basically the dried super glue. There you go, you can see it there. And then and it's very much, you know, that stuff you get like on magazines when they stick something on there, a freebie or something, a badge in a packet or something. That's what it's like. It's very, very weird. So anyway, I'm going to get this cleaned up, and then we'll come back to the model. Right, here we are back with the engine. So that nozzle's gone back in the acetone now for a final soak. But I just thought I'd include that because it was something I didn't know. So, you know, if after so many years of modelling I didn't know it, probably you guys didn't know it either. But yeah, amazing. So, piece of 0.5 plastic card, 20 thou. Okay, so put the calipers away. And we're going to look around these engines, and we can see this is the worst one. This has got some fairly big gaps. There's a gap down the side there, and there's a gap down the side there which is slightly smaller. So what I want to do is make a piece of plastic to go in here. So I've got this strip, and it's a little bit too wide to fit in there, but I'm going to get a pencil, wherever my pencil is. As much as you try and prepare yourself before these videos, there's always something you haven't got at hand. So I'm going to get a pencil and just draw that shape around there, okay? And then what I can do is come along with a pair of cutters, again not prepared, and I can just basically cut myself a piece of plastic card, roughly the right shape, like so, and then get my tweezers, drop that in there, okay, whoops, get it in the right place, push it in at the top, there we go, make sure it's come right out, there we are. So that's in there like that. Okay, now we don't need that piece on the bottom, so I'm basically going to put this in a different way. I'm going to put it in like that. Just shows you don't have to have perfectly cut pieces or anything. I'm just going to wedge that in there, push it up, and then pivot it up like so. There we go. So that's in there now, and it's covering the gap. Alright, now what I don't want to have to do is sand in here, because it'd be difficult to sand in there with this tail cone in the way. So if we get it right there, I could just take some extra thin, brush it around there, brush it around the other side, just to make sure it's glued in, and then we can leave that to dry. And that is a really good way of filling gaps where you've got, you know, a definite gap. Now that there, you could put some filler in it, but again, I'm going to use some plastic card. So this time the gap is too wide, so I could reach for some thinner plastic card, but I haven't told you guys to get any thinner plastic card. So once again, we can sand our plastic card down using a coarse sander, and make it fit in that gap. So it still needs to be sanded some more. Like that. Now that's wedging in there now, but it's still a little tight, so I'm just going to sand a bit more off of there. Maybe I could jam that in there now. Maybe try it that way round. And as you can see, there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just jam it in. There we go. And then what we can do is just come along with our snips and cut the excess away. And I'm going to cut away that piece on the bottom there. So that is what we want, like that. Just cut down through the top. That will go away. Again, get the Tamiya extra thin in both sides. Let that go in. I'm just going to give that top a nudge. There we are. So I need to do the same on the bottom of one of them. Here we go, that was the same. But everywhere else is okay around the tops and everything. So I'll get that done and then I'll be back again. Right, I've been doing some sanding. You've seen me just sand and sand and sand and sand and sand for the last 3 or 4 parts of this build, so I'm not going to put you through all that. So you can see I've sanded down that plastic card around there. I also glued a piece of plastic card to the bottom one of these here because it had a big step which was going up from here to here. If you ever do this, use super glue, don't use liquid poly, because what happens is you obviously have a large area there, you make a mess of the liquid poly, which is just a gunge, and basically it takes forever to dry. So use super glue, and then once you've done it, if you want to go around with a little bit of extra thin just around the edges, just to sort of weld the edges in or whatever, that's okay. But the thing is, if you use super glue, you end up with a hard adhesive, if you like, between the two materials rather than this molten mess. So that's all there. That needs some more sanding and blending just in on the edges and stuff, just to blend all that in. And I will be going over everything, all of these joints I'm going to go over with Mr. Surfacer 1000, and that will and then enable me to sand or whatever. I think we are going to end up losing some of this panel line detail on here. I'm going to try and sort of restrict it to say to keep these lines here, or I may just end up sanding it all off and just end up with these lines here remaining. I don't know, and they're raised panel lines anyway, so I don't know. We shall see, but I certainly won't be re-establishing these by either scribing or adding stretch sprue. So there we go. So there's the engines there. We've got the fronts of the pylons kind of blended in, or blended in on the bottoms. So let's get some Mr. Surfacer on there and let that dry, and then we'll come back. Right, so a little while later now, we've got some Mr. Surfacer around all those gaps. So we'll let that dry, and then we can do some sanding or whatever. But all ready and all looking pretty. So make that all seamless. I think we are going to lose a lot of this panel detail, but never mind. So I've just done the fin. I've just finished, if you remember it in part 10, was it, or part 9, where I put some sprue goo in the fin, and that's all hard now because this is like 3 days later. So that's all hard. I've sanded that back and given it a nice sharp edge on the trailing edge, which is something you want. You can see the section there, nice sharp edge. And as you know, the tail planes are already done. They're done on the back edge, and they've got their extra vortex generators in them. So we need to look at something else, and I don't really want to go and do the fuselage until the last minute that I have to do it, because as I've said before, there's a lot of glue in there, it may shrink back. So let's have a look at these wings. Now, first things first, we're not going to be hanging this off the ceiling, so I need to cut that off, because that is just a mounting point for hanging the aircraft from the ceiling, which we don't want to do. So we'll get rid of that, and we're going to have to look at plugging that hole somehow, and I'll show you how to do that. And we'll do that before we put the wings together. In fact, let's do that now. Right, so I've got my wings here, and you can see, as I said, I've cut them off, and what we've got in the back here is a 3mm indentation. You can even see the crosshairs where they've marked it to put the, well, probably to drill the tool and then put a raised piece in to mould it. And what we've got here is like a rectangular hole, so you can see down in the bottom of there is a rectangular hole. So I've got a piece of 3mm sprue, roughly 3mm diameter, filed the end square, and then you can force that up in there, and as you can see it kind of fills the gap. Okay, so what we'll do is we will cut that off. Okay, then I'm going to grab some super glue, and I'm using super glue because if I use liquid cement it will make a solvent action, whereas this will just be glued in place. So I can put some super glue in there, and if you notice I've put quite a large drop in there because I want it to surround the part. Okay, so I've pushed that through, and you can see the super glue has come through to that side. So we can now just leave that. Don't go putting accelerators on there and stuff which makes it all brittle. Just leave that and let that dry. So we'll put that to one side. So we'll do the same with the other side. Okay, so we're going to put the lid back on a super glue just in case. And we'll take a stick, this is a 220, and we're going to sand to make that wedge shape on the end to fill the hole in. Okay, so that's about the right depth, and now we want to get the width down. Okay, so that's almost going in, so it just needs sanding a bit more. And there we go, that's just coming through, so I'm going to sand it a little bit more. There we are, we've got that coming through properly now. So once again, take our super glue, just put a drop over the hole like so, push that in. The super glue hasn't come through the right hand side there, so I'm just going to use the bit of plastic to pull it over and then turn the plastic around. And there we go, that should just stick in there now and stay, and then the glue will work its way around and sort it out, and then afterwards we'll trim that off, sand that side down, and that'll be job done. Right, moving on to these flaps. I've got them off the sprue, and I've actually cleaned up all the sprue connection points. You've seen that over and over again, so you don't need to keep seeing that. Now we've got some flash around the edge here, you can see, so I'm going to take my 400 stick, just sand that away, just like that. Just to clean up those edges, and then just run over with the stick along the edge just to take the edge off that you've just made from sanding it. You know, it's the flash sort of rolls over on itself. The other thing you can do to remove that is just come along with a knife, just gently scrape it, and that'll take it off. So we go along there, go along there, go along there, along there. Okay, that's so good. Now you can see that with these, just with this one, they've got sink marks everywhere, but that's the underside, so we're not going to worry about that too much. We've also got this pip on here. Now that pip, I think, is designed to jam it in, because these are designed to work. They're designed to come out and then lock up in. So if I just show you what I mean, I haven't done any cleanup on these yet, so we've got some flash on there that needs to come off. Just going to run a sander up the sides to make sure there's nothing there, and then this flap is going to go in here like so. Okay, so when it goes up in, basically that pip on there is going to jam in and hold it up in. So if you're building your model to play with, and you want the flaps to be movable, then leave it in place. I'm not, I'm going to have mine hanging out, but I am going to want them to stay up in place while we're assembling everything. So we'll leave it on there for now, and then when we come to paint the undersides, we'll take it off. So, and that's also on the other smaller flap as well, on the outboard flap. So these are obviously going to be visible. This will be painted all zinc chromate yellow, and there should be a lot more detail on here, but there isn't. But I want mine with the flaps down. So basically we've got ejector pin marks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on there, and the same on here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on there. So we can just run across here with this is a 400 grit stick, and just sand away until the raised areas around the ejector pin marks disappear. As you can see, they're sunken, so we need to fill them in. Now, you could use super glue and talcum powder as a filler. You could use filler, you could use Mr. Surfacer. I'm going to use Mr. Surfacer because they're very shallow. If they're deep, I would recommend using a drop of super glue first and then go in with the filler afterwards, or with the Mr. Surfacer afterwards. Now we may as well just sand all of them while we're here, because it saves getting the Mr. Surfacer out 4 times. So we may as well just do them all now, and we can see that these are slightly more raised. Now if I can, I'll get in here with a slightly coarser stick and just take off the raised areas, but without damaging any of the detail. And the other thing I want to check before we go sanding these after the mist, I want to check if this is supposed to be a razor sharp edge. I'm sure it will be, but we will see. And if it is, I'll sand it all from this side because there's detail on this side. So we've also got a lot of sinkage along here, so it'll be handy to get rid of that. So that's those, and then we've got the same on here, 1, 2, 3, 4 on these, and these are raised by the look of it. So one way to tell how things are going is get your pencil. As I said before, don't use a pen. Just run your pencil over it. The only trouble with using pencil, of course, on camera is certain angles you can't see it. So if you can't see it, I'm sorry, but because it's lead, it has a certain amount of reflectivity. So there is a line across here. We're going to have to lose that because of the sanding. But yeah, you can see there that that line, that ejector pin is raised, as is that one. As is that one and that one. So we don't need to worry about these at the moment. And they are all raised as well. Or is that one? Yeah, that one will just sand out. That one is basically pretty flush. There we go, that one's gone. But these others are raised, so we don't need to worry about those for now. So I get some Mr. Surfacer in these. So I'm going to grab a drop of my Mr. Surfacer 1000. Take a brush. As I've said before, I've got brushes dedicated to Mr. Surfacer. I'm just going to paint a drop in there, and I'm going to put another drop on there so it can sink back. If speed is what you're looking for, by all means use some super glue, but mix some talc or something with it to soften it, otherwise you'll end up, as I've said before, you'll end up with a bulge when you start sanding. There we go, and I think that one there that was just sunken, I'll just go over that area just in case. We'll look at this one. And there we go, so now we're waiting for more Mr. Surfacer to dry. So everything I do, I'm waiting for stuff to dry, and this is the problem. As you get deeper and deeper into the model, there's less you can do, be getting on with. I mean, we could start sanding the fuselage, but I don't want to be doing that in this part. What we could do is start to clean up all the wings. Okay, so moving on to these these raised areas in the wings now. Remember, we cut these off and then we put the sprue in behind. This has been on about 3 or 4 hours now, so they've gone nice and hard. So once again, we will grab our cheap masking tape. Don't go using your expensive Tamiya tape and stuff, just use the rubbish. And basically we are going to mask just over the panel line. So we're going to mask, so my nose is running. I have just had a very hot chili, and my eyes are a little watery, and my nose is running, and yeah, but it was very, very nice. So we're just going to cover the surrounding area and our panel lines and everything, and we're going to take our snips and just cut off the raised area there, and then we can come in with a pretty coarse sanding stick and just rub over. Okay, and as soon as we see the masking tape be worn through, we stop. Now I'm starting to see it getting a bit thin there, just keeping an eye on it. There we go, it's starting to go there, so take it off, move it around, put it in a different spot. Just like so. Waste not, want not, and then do the same again. I'm keeping it flat and level. Again, we're going through the masking tape there, you can see, but it's double thickness, so that's all right. We're going through it here now, so we know we're nearly there. So lift it up again, and as you can see, we're sanding away, but we've still got our panel lines, they're not affected. Okay, so we can come in again with our masking tape and cover our panel lines. Just like that. There we go. I think I was going to call that a day for that. Then what we can do is start to do some delicate work. So again, we'll cover up our panel lines like so. And then what we'll do is just with the corner of the stick, making sure it doesn't touch anywhere else, just go alongside and up to the masking tape. We just want to break down that lump. As soon as we start to see the parent material, the plastic around the super glue, start to be sanded, we know we're flush. Okay, so take away the tape. And I mean, if we do mark the panel line, then, you know, so be it. It's quite an obvious spot on top of the wing there, but as long as you don't go tearing in there and completely ripping it away, you'll be absolutely fine. They won't show up very much under the paint anyway. There we go. So now I'm going to take my good old trusty 400 grit, which I use for everything, and just smooth out the area where I've sanded. And we will call that a day. And then when we come to prime, we will concentrate some primer in that area and then do some sanding again. But we can see, I mean, if you look at it, it looks like it's got a line around it. That is basically what you're looking at, is the masking tape. If you come along with a pin head or something, you can rub it across and you'll feel that it's smooth, even though it looks kind of like it's got a recessed line around it. And if you really want to go to town, you can carefully, just gently with your knife, just scrape over, making sure you don't touch the panel line. And there we go. And then if you really want to, you can come along and sand it. So again, put it on the bench. Don't try and hold it in the air, because when it's all flapping about is when you make mistakes. And there we go. That's our lump removed with the panel line still in place. So I'll go and do the other one. See you in a minute. Okay, so when I came to the what's this, the port wing, the actual lifting eye, the thing for tying it to the ceiling, which I've never seen in a model before, was actually running right in the middle of a panel line. So I've had to sand that panel line out, and now we're going to replace it. As you can see on here, I have got a piece of stretch sprue taped onto the wing where the panel line was, and that is going to replace my panel line. Now I can see that this one here needs to move over slightly at this end, and then we can pull it tight, and we can see that that's basically there. And what I'm going to do is come along with a drop of extra thin, and I am going to brush over the top of it just like that. Now I just saw it capillary under there. I hope it hasn't gone all the way under that tape, and it's going to make a mess, because that will be a shame, because I'll have to replace that one as well. But that is basically it. So that is, just rub a finger on, make sure it's down flat. That is a raised panel line replaced. So what is stretch sprue? It is basically what it says it is. So I'm going to cut this off of here. And basically what we do, this is why I said keep some sprues out of your kit earlier in about part 5 or 6 or whatever. And what I'm going to do is come along with a cigarette lighter. Now the best way to do this is with a candle, then you have both hands. But I don't have a candle with me, so all I'm going to do is hold my cigarette lighter there and just hold the sprue over the top until it starts to go floppy, and it will start to go floppy and bend. There we go. See how it's gone? Right, and then we're going to pull it. And just keep pulling it and pulling it and pulling it and pulling it and pulling it, and just keep pulling. And my hands are right up there about, there it goes, it snapped. My hands were about a metre apart then before it snapped. And you can see that what we've got is a very, very fine piece of sprue that basically matches our panel lines. So the reason I've done it this way around is so that I can show you the effect. And that is basically stretch sprue, and you can use it for all sorts of things like antenna and all sorts. So all I need to do now is come along with my knife blade and cut it on the end, and cut it on the end here, and then pull this part up, and that'll come away. Pull this part up, and that'll come away. And as you can see, it did capillary under there, but it didn't go into the tape, so that's okay. Alright, and that is that. And you can see now when you look at it close up, I mean it's obvious because it's got the shiny glue around it, but what we've got is a replacement of those panel lines. Now if I want to, all I've got to do, as I showed you, was it earlier in this video or yesterday's video, I think it was part 12, where I showed you that we use these fiberglass pens, and I can just rub over that gently with this fiberglass pen, get rid of the glue marks, especially on there, and you'll never know that you were ever there doing anything. Okay, now if you get there and you think it's a little bit high, come along, nice sanding stick, gently sand over the top. Job done. Go over your fiberglass pen again. Job done. Okay, it's that simple. And I'm just going to clean up that glue mark that's in that groove, because that is the groove where the black paint's going to be. And there we go. That's it. That's our panel line done. So it doesn't look like it's quite straight. So what I can do is come along with a rule, and before the glue dries I can just nudge it over and straighten it up. I've probably done it too quickly because I've got the camera on. I want to show you guys. I probably should have left it for half an hour before I brushed over it, but Everything you've seen there is done in real time. There we go. Once that's had a coat of primer on it, you know, that's it. And that is so much better than having that stupid great lump there for the cotton to be gone through if you want to tie it to your ceiling. So there we are. It's quite late at night at the moment, and I'm waiting for, I've put another load of Mr. Surfacer on these engines. I'm waiting for that to dry. I've also done the sanding on the flaps and thinned out the back edge. I've got Mr. Surfacer in here waiting to dry. So we'll cover all that, and that'll probably be, for me, tomorrow. For you, 3 seconds. See you in a minute. Okay, pushing forward here. This has been like 24 hours. And what I've done here, you can see I've got Mr. Surfacer on it. These flaps, when I started looking at them, they were awful. They were full of sake marks on this face, which is going to be seen, and that face should be pretty flat. I mean, they should have lots of circular discs and stuff on there, but we're not going to worry about that. This is an out-of-the-box build. So what I've done, I've actually painted Mr. Surfacer over where the low areas are, and if I catch it in the light, you'll be able to see it there, and then gone over with grey primer. This is an easier way to see. And then what I can do is use that grey primer as my guide for high and low spots. So I've got my piece of denim here now, clean the sanding stick off, and then I can basically sand through. And what I want to see is, you can see here we've got Mr. Surfacer is the lighter grey colour, the plastic is the medium grey colour, and then the primer is the dark grey. And I don't want to see any dark grey plastic left at all. I just want to see Mr. Surfacer and plastic. So it's a good guide to know that you're flat and all done and everything. Now if we look on here, we can see we've got some low areas there, so I can keep sanding, but being careful not to actually go too far, because you don't want to completely lose the shape. You don't want to lose the thickness of the, I really should get a new stick, but this one's had its day now, so I can basically just finish this off on these, and then that'll be that. But I don't want to clog up a new stick with primer and Mr. Surfacer. Mr. Surfacer's one downfall is it does tend to clog your sticks up, so yeah, it's worth remembering. But basically you can see here I'm sanding away, and I've got light grey there with the dark grey next to it, which means that the Mr. Surfacer is higher than the surrounding grey primer, so we can keep sanding away there until that area disappears. And this is, again, this is something you can apply to any kit, any genre, you know, cars, tanks, boats, ships, sci-fi, whatever. If you're after a flat surface, this is a good way to do it, because you're basically using this now, and it's showing you where the low spots are. And this is actually, I mean, this is something they do in the real world of car bodywork. You know, use a guide coat, and I'm sure we've all seen a car that has a coat of primer and then a very light spattering of a dark coloured paint, and that is called a guide coat. And what that is when you sand through on a flat panel, if you see areas of the dark paint still remaining, like here, that means there's a low spot. So so that's that, and that's showing us that we need to put some more Mr. Surfacer in here, even though it's already had about, I don't know, 4 or 5 applications. It's still asking for more, so that's a proper problem. Now if we rub that away, if we cover that up with Mr. Surfacer, and then when we sand it away we end up with grey primer again, we know that what we've got is grey primer in the low areas, so that's absolutely fine. But we basically want to be able to make sure that we have no low areas whatsoever, because particularly now that we've now that we've gone over with Mr. Surfacer and started doing some sanding work, then they will be sort of more obvious, if you like, because you'll have a sharper edge on them rather than just the undulating dippy surface that we had before. I'm just going to clean this sticker. I mean, the sticker's pretty much had it now. We've actually managed to get a crease in it as well, which is something I didn't think we could do, but it has happened. So But unfortunately the zebra sticks, they do a coarser one than a 400, which would be better for this, but they're too wide to get in. So I'm using this 400 Matador. There we go. And it's starting to show its ugly head and where we've got the low areas. So I'll just keep sanding, and I'll put some more Mr. Surfacer on, and I think what I'll do is come back when we're all done, because I think the last sort of 2 or 3 parts of this video, all you've seen me do is fill and sand, and even though it is a beginner's video, I think by now, you've got the gist. Okay, so still in sanding, filling city and driving me around the bend, but I'm afraid, guys, that's what you get when you get these older kits. You know, you're going to get all this sanding and filling and stuff and sorting out, or you can just glue it together and you know, put up with the seams. But if you did something like a Tamiya, say the Tamiya F14, I think you could build that model without one bit of sanding or filling. So yeah, I haven't built it myself. I've got it, but I haven't built it myself, but I believe that's the case. So there were some pretty bad sink marks in these corners on the backs of these flaps, so I filled them and sanded them. Again, used the masking tape method to make sure the raised panel lines don't get damaged. So that's that all done. And also on the backs here, I've sanded them all flat. They've had a coat of primer now, so they're ready to go with the zinc chromate. They may need a polish and another couple of coats of primer to get rid of the sanding marks, but there we go. And then the outboard flaps there, they're all done. And you can see I've thinned the trailing edges on them as well. So that's all done. Now onto these engines. Now I've gone over another coat of Mr. Surfacer on this seam around here, okay, and now it needs to be sanded. Now, as I've said before, when we did the, what was it we did? The engines, wasn't it? You can't see what things are like until you start to get one colour on there. So what it looks like, I mean, this here, you can see this torn up edge. That's just where I've cleaned the rubbish out of the groove. But if you look at this one here, you can see that I've primed it, and you can see that on this side it looks pretty good, and on this side it looks like we've got a mark. So if you come along, these are Flory sanding sticks from Phil Flory's website. I think you can get them at his PM model store. If you haven't already looked on there, I'm not sponsored by him in any way, shape or form, but PM model store, it's Phil and Matt, basically. Phil Flory and his mate Matt McDougall, I can't remember. No, it's not Matt McDougall. But basically, Matt McDougall is Doug's Models. Basically, they sell a lot of kits at very good prices, and I think they sell the Flory range of sanders as well. But these are the Flory skinny sticks. You can also get them from UMP and various other manufacturers. But the Flory does a really good range of these skinny sponges and skinny sticks. He also does a sort of assortment pack. So these are really good for this sort of thing, because you can get in and lightly sand and basically roll the stick around like I'm doing here and keep your radius going. And basically what we're doing is we're sanding away, and we're looking for where we see Mr. Surfacer. We know we've got a raised area of Mr. Surfacer, so we can sand that away. But then where we see a grey line like here, that means the primer's still there, which means it's shallow. So that'll be where the Mr. Surfacer wasn't thick enough, or it's shrunk away. And then down this area here where you've got this radius going up into the pylon, we want to basically see all plastic there. We don't want to be seeing fillers and stuff in there. We want to see all plastic so that it blends. Okay, and if we've got a little bit of Mr. Surfacer in the joint, that's absolutely fine, but we don't want to be sanding the thing to give us 100% Mr. Surfacer. So, and we are going to lose all this pylon detail. I'm afraid it's going to be inevitable, because once we've done this, we need to level everything out and get a wider stick on her and just flatten it all. Otherwise the pylon's going to sort of look like this as it comes down. So but we'll cover that. So There we go. Now we can see we've got a couple of dark areas here, so we're going to have to go with Mr. Surfacer again. Now you may choose to just at this point push on, and you know, because you're fed up with sanding and filling, and you might decide to just push on and get on with your build. That's up to you. Entirely up to you. It's your model, and no one can tell you what to do. I can only show you how to strive for a perfect joint, and you know, and that's what I'm talking about when you see these videos that sort of, they're an hour long and they're a complete build. As you can see, the amount of time and effort I've put into this, you know, just sanding on these engines, I've probably spent 4 hours sanding on these engines, I would say, because there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes off the camera, I can assure you, because I'm trying, and I think I'm probably failing, to keep these videos from becoming boring, because they're just hours and hours of bloody sanding and filling. And I can tell you, once we get these engines done, we will be moving on to the wings, and things will really start to get moving then, because then we're into actually final assembly. And I'm still trying to decide what to do about these engines, and I think I'm going to sort of paint the engines and glue them to the wings, and then we can deal with this joint here in the wing, and then we'll fit it all to the fuselage as one, because trying to manhandle a fuselage and fit the wings and blend all this in at the same time, I think will be extremely difficult. I know that Stuart sent a message and he said that he built it all. He remembered that, you know, masking all this up and painting the engines with the camouflage was extremely difficult with that as one. So I think what we'll do is we'll do the black underside, the camouflage on the top, and then we can mask up here, and then when we come to paint the pylons, they're black, it will be all easy, because all the camouflage will be covered up. So there we go. You can see I'm sanding here now, and I've got no dark grey areas, which means I've got no low areas, which is good. There's a little, oh no, it's gone now. I thought there was a little touch there. But basically, by rolling the stick around like this, okay, you're going to end up with a nice kind of radius in there, and you can see it's all blended in. There is a tiny dark mark there at the back. You can see at the top where that corner is. So that's going to need a little drop more Mr. Surfacer. But basically, that will all sand in and blend in beautifully. Same on this side. But we just really want it to be all smooth and joint free. So that's going to need a bit more Mr. Surfacer. This side is just going to need a tiny spot there, and that's it. So I've done another one here. You can see that there's a bit of dark grey there, so that's going to need some. There's a sink mark there. We've got a sink mark there, and there's a bit of dark grey along there. So another quick going over the Mr. Surfacer and give them a sand, and that will be that. So I'm going to do the same thing over and over again until I get these engines all done. So I think we'll call it a day there for this video, part 13, rather than subject you to any more sanding. And then in part 14, what we'll do is we'll have these done, and we'll start looking at the assembly of the wings, and we'll fit our flaps, do all the cleanup. We've already done this on the top and put this replace this scribed line on there, or this raised line on there, and this one here. I've gone around and cleaned up. We also need to note something I need to show you to be aware of. Which one is it? It's going to be the last part I pick up, isn't it? There is a, here we go. You can see this edge along here cuts in, and it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be straight. It's actually a fault in the mold tool, because I've got 3 of these and they're all the same. So very, very strange. I haven't sanded it. It's very, very weird. It's like a built up area in the mold tool. The scribed line is there. The engraved line is there. The raised line, should I say, is still there. So it's almost like the mold tool has had a repair or a big dent or something. It's, but yeah, there you go. So that's going to require some filler just to straighten that out. But you can see when you fit it to the relevant upper wing, yeah, there's a lot of cleanup required around these bits here, guys. If you're building this kit with me, you know, get your knife, get your sanding sticks out, and spend half an hour cleaning all that, because there is a lot of flash and cleanup required in that area, which you would expect for a kit this old. There we go. You can see when I put the wings together, you can see the upper wing is straight, but that lower wing, you've got that step there. So we'll be filling that when we come to do the when we come to gluing the wings together. But they are lovely wings. They are really, really nice. I believe they have the correct cord on them, the or airfoil, should I say. I think the Model Collect is too blunt on the front. I think it's too fat here as well. So yeah, I'm actually making these AGM 28 pylons with the I-beam or HSAB, whatever it is, and they're much too low on the Model Collect kit, so I think the wing's actually too thick. So anyway, there we go. So that's it for part 13. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm sorry this has been a bit boring. I think this video is probably quite short as well, but I don't want to just bore you to death with sanding and filling, but I do want to make you aware that, you know, if you're into modelling and you're building older kits, this is what you're going to be in for. And some of the newer kits, some of the newer Kitty Hawk kits, they need a bit of filling and, you know, bit of sanding and stuff with their multi-part fuselages and stuff. But if you're building something like, I say, the Tamiya F14, I don't think you use any filler on that at all, you know, something like a Tamiya 1/32 scale Spitfire, you know. But if you're looking at building your skills and your filling skills and your seaming skills and everything, get an old kit like this, build it, and you'll learn so much more than just gluing bits of plastic together. So anyway, I'm waffling. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all soon with part 14. Bye for now.